Welcome to the Lawyerist Podcast, a series of discussions with entrepreneurs and innovators about building a successful law practice in today's challenging and constantly changing legal market. Lawyerist supports attorneys building client-centered and future-oriented small law firms through community, content, and coaching, both online and through the Lawyerist Lab. And now, from the team that brought you the Small Firm Roadmap and your podcast hosts.
Hi, I'm Stephanie Everett.
And I'm Zach Glazer, and this is episode 372 of the Lawyerist Podcast, part of the Legal Talk Network. Today, our lab coach, Sarah, is talking with lab member Russell Farbiarz about the process of taking over his current law firm.
Today's podcast is brought to you by Posh Virtual Receptionist and Postali. We wouldn't be able to do this show without their support, so stay tuned because we're going to tell you more about them in a few minutes.
So, Stephanie, part of what I do at Lawyerist, obviously I do legal tech advice and whatnot, but I also write a lot for our website and do a lot of maintenance on our website. And, sometimes I don't get as much love as the podcast gets. So I wanted to shamelessly, tell people that I'm writing stuff over there. And you're writing a good deal of stuff over there. So recently we started cranking out our news articles related to industry news and community news. And I know you've been writing a good deal there.
Yeah, it's been super fun. Those who are familiar with the site, remember back in the day, it was more of like a blog where there was just kind of new articles being published all the time. And then we sort of moved away from that. And I guess the message is we're back to it a little bit, not in this new format where we're writing news articles about things that are going on and, in the industry, in our community, with the partners that we work with. And so it's been a lot of fun to write those. And so the good news is you can go to the site and on the bottom of the homepage, you'll see the latest news articles. You can scroll through there and every time you go to the site now, there's going to be something new.
So one of the things I like about this, that's not specifically on the news articles, is for the last month or 2 months, we've been creating a process out of this. We've been having to work this into our system. And it has been interesting doing that, from whole cloth, from nothing. We have a lot of processes at Lawyerist that we tweak, but this was a new process. And it was fun, quite frankly, to kind of come in and say, okay, everybody meet and figure out how to make this system work, because we don't just have one person writing these things. We have, most of the people at our company are contributing to this in at least some way, shape, or form.
Yeah. And I think it's a good reminder for anyone listening that you can restart or start things again. Like a quarter ago, this felt like a big lift that we wanted to be pumping out constant, content on the site. Mm-hmm. We were a little slow and methodical with it. We really thought through, how do we need this to look? What will the process look like? And how can we create it in a way where our team can batch their work? Anyone who's listened to us talk about project management stuff before knows we're big components of time blocking and doing your work in a way that makes sense. So you're not just skipping around from project to project. So I think we were really thoughtful in how we set up this system to really allow people work in this way, in a way that we know works best. And then we've been tweaking it we've already started tweaking it. We've already learned so much just in the first couple of weeks of doing it.
Right. But we got a good deal of buy-in from everybody and methodically went through this and started this. So, well, now here is Sarah's conversation with Russell.
Hey, everyone. My name is Russell Farbiarz. I'm a estate planning and elder law attorney based primarily in Berks County, Pennsylvania. And so for those of you not familiar, that's sort of, if you've heard of the Reading Railroad, that's the area that we're in, probably an hour from Hershey Park, maybe an hour and a half from Philadelphia. I've been in the lab community. Let's see, I think I joined lab in August of 2020, but I've sort of been in the lawyerist orbit for probably a little bit longer than that. So that's me.
Well, it's so good to have you on the podcast, Russell. We're really excited for our community to get to know you. I know that you're one of our longtime labsters, and so we want to hear, about all the great things that you have going on now and what you're excited about for the future. Before we do that, we love a good inspirational story. So take us back to the beginning of when you started your firm before you found Lawyerist and sort of, how you started out in business and where you were at the time and sort of how things progressed.
Sarah, I'm sort of surprised to hear you refer to me as a longtime labster, because I don't feel like I've been in lab that long, and that there are lots of people in lab who've been around for a while, and I have been learning from them. But I guess that I have been there for a bit of time. Where I got started, I was sort of fortunate because I didn't actually start a law firm from scratch. I graduated from law school, and I did what we're all told in law school: made law review, got a job as a law clerk, and I clerked in Bennington, Vermont, so Southwest Vermont, about an hour from Albany, New York. And I really clerked because I thought I was supposed to clerk, and I wish I had known then what I know now, which is that clerking just for the sake of clerking is not necessarily that beneficial. And so after that position, I moved to Pennsylvania with my, at the time, fiance, now wife, and her father actually owned a practice, but I didn't go into business with him immediately. What happened is I got a job working for the district attorney, and so I was working as a prosecutor, which was really great experience, learning how to walk and chew gum at the same time in the courtroom, which is helpful. And I'll never forget. I was in court one day, and my father-in-law's partner came in for a case, and I'm talking to him. I didn't know him particularly well, but I was talking to him, and he said, "How would you like to come up to Hamburg," which is where their office was, and take over for me? And I thought he was joking because he's a big jokester, but he wasn't joking. He had decided he wanted to retire, and one of the easiest ways for him to retire would be to find someone to take his place. And so, fast forward maybe 6-8 months after that, I left the DA's office and I started working initially with my father-in-law and his partner for a couple of months. Then the partner did retire, moved to Florida, and it was my father-in-law and I for a couple of years. My wife did end up joining the practice in 2012. So I joined the practice in the fall of 2009. My wife joined in 2012. And then my father-in-law left in mid 2014. He was appointed and confirmed to be a judge on the state trial court to fill out an unexpired term. And then he retired from the practice.
Okay. So you're thrown into this, existing law practice. Take us back to where you were mentally at the time. Like at that point, what did you envision the firm becoming?
At that point, I was just trying to figure out what I was doing. I can't say that I had a vision at that point because I didn't. And my father-in-law was many things, but a visionary, with regard to the practice really wasn't it. It was, or maybe he did have a vision, but it wasn't something we talked about all the time. And I really was trying to understand what it meant, not only to be a lawyer, a fairly new lawyer. I had to learn how to practice areas that I didn't have any experience in, because really the two experiences I'd had before that were clerking, which is research and writing, and criminal law, which, by the way, when I went to law school, I said I was never going to do criminal law, but there we were. And it was a practice that was primarily real estate, estate planning, estate administration. And I didn't know anything about any of those things. So I really, in the beginning, was really just trying to learn how to be an effective attorney.
Yeah.
And then also thinking about, this is a business that needs to be run. And I don't know anything about that either.
Yeah. Well, and it's not uncommon. The people that we talk to and the people that come and find us here at Lawyerist and listen to the podcast, I'm sure that they can relate to that feeling of like, well, I'm just trying to be a good lawyer. And the idea of having a thriving business is sort of an afterthought. But if you want to be a good lawyer that actually helps people, you have to focus on the business aspect too. So at what point did you realize that?
I think that I always sort of thought in my mind, okay, this is a business. It needs to be run like a business. as we evolved from like 2009 into, 2014, it was starting to become clearer that I was running the business more so than my father-in-law, because he was phasing out. So I was sort of taking care of a lot more of the day-to-day and, like, the firm management, things that needed to be done, from on the business side. But really, when he left, all of a sudden it was, okay, this now isn't his thing anymore. It was my wife's thing and my thing. And, trying to think about what that meant. But it still took, I think, a couple more years before I really started to think very critically about running things more like a business rather than, just a practice.
Yeah.
I think lawyers really fall into this trap of, well, I'm a lawyer, I'm a professional, so I don't need to run a business. It's a practice. I'm immune from all of those stresses. And it's just not true.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, I started to realize that there needed to be more intentionality, but I didn't really know what to do or how to get started.
Yeah. So now that it was just you and your wife at that point, how did you divvy up running the business between you?
So it was my wife and I. However, she was only working 3 days a week because we had small children. So it was a blessing because she was able to be home 2 days, have our kids in daycare or preschool 2 days, or 3 days rather. So there was a balance. And when she joined the firm in 2012, we had one child. Well, now we have three. So we went through 2 maternity leaves in the process.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that a lot of it came down to me. We did talk about a lot of stuff, a lot of it while we were brushing our teeth in the morning as we were getting ready to get the kids to school. That was when we had firm meetings, as we called it,
Yeah.
But I think a majority of it fell to me just by the fact that she didn't have the hours in the day.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think that that's really relatable. So you have all this pressure on you. It's like no pressure, right?
None at all.
Yeah, right. So at that point, what were you struggling with the most?
At that point, it was just trying to get all the work done. And I don't even know that there was any one thing. We were blessed in the sense that longstanding practice, we had a following that existed for a long time. So I wouldn't say it was, getting clients in the door, but maybe it was getting the right kind of clients in the door.
Mm-hmm.
And really earning the respect of not only the legal community, but the community at large to get those other clients in the door. And really making sure we have the right financial controls in place. And really the reason that I joined Lawyerist, sort of fast forwarding, is because we had no process or procedure for anything. And it was, so everything was, it was like the first year every year, because there was no, this is how we do things document. There was no firm, info based. The institutional memory was sort of in certain long-term employees. It was not recorded anywhere. There was no training. It was very catch as catch can.
Yeah. And it sort of forced you to reinvent a new system every time. And it certainly wasn't it wasn't set up for you to grow and to scale had you started to bring more people onto your team, because you knew how things would get done and you kind of got into a rhythm with it. But it sounds like, at that point, it wasn't ever documented and it wasn't transferable had you had started growing. We're going to take a quick break to hear from our sponsors. And then when we come back, we want to hear all about how you started to change things.
The Lawyerist Podcast is brought to you by Posh Virtual Receptionists. As an attorney, do you ever wish you could be in 2 places at once? You could take a call while you're in court, capture a lead during a meeting, or schedule an appointment with a client while you're elbow deep in an important case? Well, that's where Posh comes in. Posh is a team of professional, US-based live virtual receptionists who are available 24/7, 365. They answer and transfer your calls, so you never miss an opportunity. With Posh handling your calls, you can devote more time to billable hours in building your law firm. And the convenient Posh app puts you in total control of when your receptionist steps in. So if you can't answer, Posh can. And if you've got it, Posh is always just a tap away. With Posh, You can save as much as 40% off your current service provider's rates. Even better, Posh is extending a special offer to Lawyerist listeners. Visit posh.com/Lawyerist to learn more and start your free trial of Posh Live Virtual Receptionist services. That's posh.com/Lawyerist. And from LawPay, the gold standard in payments for the legal industry. For more than 15 years, our partners at LawPay have been helping lawyers get paid faster. In fact, 62% of bills sent via LawPay are paid the same day. To learn how you can enjoy faster and more reliable payments, schedule your demo at lawpay.com/Lawyerist. And from Postali. Finding a marketing partner for your firm can be challenging. Are you getting sound advice? Is your marketing agency always working in your best interest? You shouldn't have to worry about these things. At Postali, they believe marketing companies should adopt the same duty to their clients that is required of the legal profession. For this reason, they require that all team members sign a fiduciary oath to act in good faith and put clients' best interests ahead of their own. They service with care, candor, and loyalty. Postali is a full-service digital marketing agency exclusively for lawyers. To learn more about how they're different, visit postali.com/Lawyerist.
And we're back. So now, at what point did you find us here at Lawyerist, and how did that all come to be?
Or just to go back to your last question, though, for a moment, when I was looking for something like Lawyerist, I didn't necessarily know that it existed. I really felt like I was sort of at the center of everything in our business. You know, everything had to come back to me before anyone could move to the next step, and that became very frustrating. And it wasn't a good use of my time. I mean, we were the sort of firm, and there's nothing wrong with this, that I would meet with the client, I would dictate what I needed on a dictaphone, and it would go to the secretary. They type it, they prepare it. That's how they would get their instructions. And while that can work, it's not particularly scalable. You know, it relies on my time too much. Mm-hmm. So that's sort of floating around in my mind. We were opening up a satellite office. And I started thinking, because at that point, you know, everything was based on our on-premises server. And I was thinking, we really need to upgrade our practice management system. And literally every time I searched for a practice management system, Lawyerist would come up. And
you're like, who are these people?
Who are these people? So, you know, 3 or 4 times. So then I was like, well, I was reading their reviews of all of the practice management systems, but then I was like, who are these people? And I started listening to the podcast and you know, really paying attention. And I remember when I was feeling really frustrated, and you know, at the end of the podcast, you know, they say if you go to this site, you can schedule like a 15-minute call with Stephanie. And I remember I got on the phone with Stephanie the first time, and I felt like I was talking to a celebrity because I had heard her voice so many times on the podcast.
She gets that a lot.
And I was like, oh my God, you're a real person.
Yeah.
And I brought this up to her a couple of times because I remember talking to her about Lab at the time. This was probably, I want to say 2018 or so. And I remember she told me, you know, what Lab cost. And I said, well, Stephanie, I would never pay that much. It's you know, how could anyone pay that? And she was like, okay. And then, you know,
we're done here.
knowing that I was, you know, just in the wrong place or that I just wasn't there yet. Mm-hmm. But she did, at that point, she did tell me about the accelerator program that was going to be coming out. I think that came out in 2019. And I did participate in that program. Or maybe I talked to her in 2019, because that program, I think, was in early 2020. And I remember it was a good program. And I remember honestly, I didn't take the work as serious as it needed to be taken. And then we had a pandemic, you know, right as I was in the first session that was sort of ending around March of 2020. And, you know, that was when LabCon was very quickly switched to, you know, from being in person to being virtual for the first time. And I attended, you know, part of that. And that's sort of what got me thinking about Lab and about, you know, there is this whole community here of people who think like me and are trying to do what I'm trying to do and improve their businesses and not just look at their practice as a practice and looking at it as a business. And I did end up joining Lab in, I believe, August or September of 2020. And I did say to Stephanie, well, I guess I was wrong because it is worth it.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. I mean, what a testimonial. So, how else has your thinking changed as far as how you do business now versus how you did business pre-Lawyerist?
Some of it is, how I did business pre-pandemic and, mid or post-pandemic, depending on your opinion of where we are.
It's all a blur. Yeah.
But I never would have imagined before I was in Lawyerist that I could actually work from home, 3 or 4 days a week, that I could meet with clients on Zoom or on the phone, that I could develop practices and procedures, that I could have employees who didn't necessarily live within 30 miles of my office. I have remote staff. I have someone who is in Nebraska, someone who's in the Philippines, and then I'm, looking to fill another position right now and got a resume from someone who's living in South Korea. And, just realizing the world isn't really as big as it seems, that we have the ability to really find talent, find the best talent. And it doesn't have to be someone who lives, within 15 minutes from the office. And I've also thought more in the last year and a half about client experience than I have in my entire career, trying to really create an experience that makes my clients want to come back and want to tell people about our firm.
Yeah, that's huge. When you started hiring, how did you know what the right first hires were? In other words, like what were some of the first things that you took off your plate? Because I know that's a huge question for a lot of people who come to us. It's like, I know I need help and I'm so overwhelmed, but it's so hard to, give up certain tasks to that first hire. What was that process like for you?
So I've always had staff. When I joined the firm, we had two assistants. We then expanded out to three people. But what I have found from my perspective is really thinking about not just trying to create the same position 3, 4, 5, 6 times, but trying to find someone who can fill a certain role. And I've spent a lot of time talking with Mary Ellen about, what the right skill sets are and trying to really fill holes, not holes, but, seats. Mm-hmm. And spent a lot of time thinking through my accountability chart and, trying to identify, we could use help for this particular thing. And that's been helpful, because, as you grow, you think, well, I have a legal assistant and they do, these 15 things. Well, I just need another person who can do the same 15 things. You almost want to create specialists within your firm. So that's what I've transitioned to. Like I have one person who he's pretty much our intake specialist. He's the person he's our receptionist. He answers the phone. He does a little intake with a potential client. I have another who really, she focuses on real estate. And I have an estate administration paralegal. All she does are estates. And I found that it's far more efficient to do it that way. But if I was looking at what's the first thing to get off my plate, bookkeeping. If you're not outsourcing bookkeeping, you need to outsource bookkeeping.
That's really good advice. Yeah, that's huge. So what are you excited about? What's next for you?
Oh, well, one of the things I'm excited about is trying to find someone to help with our estate practice. We really need like an accounting type person. And so that's what I'm interviewing for right now. But long-term plan, like I'm really looking forward to trying to create some different offerings for our estate planning practice. I want to create essentially like 2 tracks, almost like one which is, the more, hands-on, more attorney intensive plan or track. And then a track that's a little bit more DIY where you can, get a lot started on the website, do a lot of it yourself. It's, a lower cost option. And there would still be, consultation with the attorney, but not as in depth as, if you're in that higher tier. I think it'd be really, really neat to be able to differentiate clients, because I think that we have lots of people who, they don't want to pay, the higher dollar amounts, and maybe they're willing to do some of the work, the initial work for themselves, but we can still help those people because one of our values is access to justice, making sure that people have the ability to have an estate plan because we feel it's so important.
Yeah. And that's you demonstrating being client-centered. And we love that. So that's so exciting. If you had to sort of encapsulate in one sentence how your law firm is different now versus where it was when you first took over, what are like 2 or 3 of the biggest differences?
You're asking a lawyer to only answer you in one sentence. You haven't been around lawyers long enough to know that. That's just, we like to hear ourselves talk.
We can keep going.
But what's different is that we're innovative.
Mm-hmm.
I don't feel constrained by anything really anymore. At this point, I have this problem. There are so many different ways to solve it. And, staffing, I'm not constrained by my local market. I'm not constrained by geographical location. There's no reason I can't work with a client on estate planning who lives on the other side of the state, because we have the means to do that now. In a lot of ways, it's more exciting because when I get up in the morning to go to work, it's not just about, okay, whose will am I writing today? It's how am I going to make this better? How am I going to make this mine? And it's exciting. It's also terrifying at times, but it's mostly exciting.
Yeah. Well, that's so inspiring. I mean, like you said, there are some blessings that have come out of the pandemic, just the ease of connecting with people from far away and hiring people from all over. And just, it really opens up so much opportunity and possibility. And, possibility really is limitless. And you're someone who has demonstrated that. So for that person listening who they know they need to make changes in their business, they know that they need to create better systems and processes. Maybe they need to hire. They just need to rethink how they're doing things, but maybe they're just unsure where to start. Maybe they don't know whether now's the right time to focus on their business rather than just focusing on the lawyering aspect. What's something encouraging that you could say to that person?
Pick up the phone, call, set up a call, send an email, get started now. You're never more ready than you are right now. This is something I say when I do estate planning webinars with potential clients is now is the right time because you're never going to be more healthy or more prepared to create your plan than you are right now. Well, the same applies here. You're not going to regret getting started, and you don't have to jump all in. I mean, there's lots of stuff on the insiders group that is really helpful. It doesn't cost anything. There's tons of stuff on, because on the website, because that's how I got started. I was in insiders when it was a paid community. I think it was like $100 for the year, but it was a lot of value. I mean, the budget I do for my firm every year is the Lawyerist form that I got 4 or 5 years ago from the insiders group. Just get started, because Rome wasn't built in a day. Your firm's not going to be built in a day. It takes a lot of time and a lot of effort, but it doesn't start until you start.
Amen to that. Yeah, that's great advice. Just start. You're never going to be as young and healthy and ready as you are today. It's so true. Well, thank you so much for being with us. Thank you for taking the time to come on the Lawyerist podcast and share your story. Thank you for what you do to make the world a better place. We're so excited to see what you do next. Anything else you'd like to share with us that's next for you that we can kind of be on the lookout for?
Other than, I want to start working on that 2-track system I just talked about, but
yeah, that's so exciting.
Right now, nothing else at the moment, but I really appreciate the opportunity to be here today with you.
The Lawyerist podcast is edited by Brittany Felix. Are you ready to implement the ideas we discuss here into your practice? Wondering what to do next? Here are your first 2 steps. First, if you haven't read the Small Firm Roadmap yet, grab the first chapter for free at lawyerist.com/book. Looking for help beyond the book? Let's chat about whether our coaching communities are right for you. Head to lawyerist.com/community/lab to schedule a 10-minute call with our team to learn more. The views expressed by the participants are their own and are not endorsed by Legal Talk Network. Nothing said in this podcast is legal advice for you.